had he not been in it, I still would have loved it. But the kind of Goldblumishness that we were treated to in this movie, it was a delight.
Welcome to the very first episode of Feminist Frequency Radio. I am your host, Anita Sarkeesian, and I am joined by Feminist Frequency's managing editor, Carolyn Pettit.
Hello.
And Feminist Frequency's operations director, Ebony Astor.
What's up?
We are the podcast that asks you to be critical of the media you love. Alternatively, we are the feminist killjoys that are coming for your media. On today's...
Sorry, I had to do an evil laugh. I mean, that's what we feminists do.
I like that it was a little bit delayed, like you couldn't hold it in.
Yeah.
All right. On today's show, we'll start with some pop culture check-in, like news of another Star Wars trilogy. We'll dig a little deeper into the latest Thor movie, get into Super Mario Odyssey, and we'll end with a little bit of What's Your Deal, which is a name that I hate, but apparently everyone else likes it, so you'll hear more about that. For those of you who are DRIP members, you're going to get a special bonus feature of Hate Mail Hootenanny. And if you don't know what DRIP is, it is Kickstarter's brand new membership subscription crowdfunding program, which we are so excited to be a part of. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us and you want to help us keep making this podcast, please go check out our Feminist Frequency Radio DRIP page. The link is in the info box, and you can learn more about the project that we're doing here, and you can learn about how you can support us. Hey, so how's the United States working out for all of you over there in the United States right now?
I can't even handle the humble bragging that happens nonstop when Anita is on one of her mini world tours.
I gotta say, though, I do enjoy how we get sunlight here until the late hour of 5 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
It is just so... I just bask in all that daylight.
Oh, you're so mean. All right. So I am in Sweden, and the sun goes down at like 3 p.m. here, and it's very, very disorienting. Like, I was like, it's 6:30. It's time for bed, right? Anyways, I have a little fun fact about Sweden that I would like to share with everyone. I was in a restaurant, and it was a rather
More
nice
humble bragging.
restaurant. I was just in a fucking restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so I was in a restaurant. It was like, it was not like an ostentatiously like expensive restaurant, but it was like a nice little restaurant, whatever. You'd bring a date there. It'd be nice. So I finished my meal, and then I was like, I'm going to use the bathroom really quick before I have to walk back to my hotel. I walk into the single stall, like one person bathroom, and there are 2 toilets just like kicking it in the single stall. Like you literally, you walk in and you're like, do you use the left toilet or the right toilet?
Like, under what circumstances would both toilets be simultaneously used?
Goddamn idea. Okay, so I've been asking people, what on earth? And they're like, oh, yeah, that happens sometimes. And I'm like, why does that happen sometimes? Like, when would that ever be used? And they're like, well, when women get drunk and stuff, they pee together.
Sure.
Yeah, you know how that happens. I mean, I've definitely had to go to the bathroom bad enough while out at a club. Just kidding, I never go out. But I've definitely had to go to the bathroom bad enough where it did not matter. There could have been a handful of people in the stall with me. But to set it up that way, that just seems like I don't need that much together time.
Bizarre.
This is why you can't leave your house. This is why I'm a homebody. You can't trust leaving the house.
I will say that toilets in Sweden are usually standalone. Like almost every toilet you encounter is like a standalone stall, and it's usually just a white door, and you have to look for the little red or green symbol, whether it's like someone's in it or not, which I appreciate, right? Like it's very rarely gendered here, which is really nice. So
yeah.
All right, y'all. That's my Sweden story. How about we do some checking in with the pop cultures? What do we got, Carol?
Well, exciting news from a galaxy far, far away, Anita.
Good Lord.
So it's been announced that Rian Johnson, who is the director of The Last Jedi, the forthcoming Star Wars film, has been pegged by Disney to originate an entirely new trilogy of Star Wars films. I think beginning in 2020 is the first projected film in that series. It will not be part of the Skywalker saga. It's an entirely new trilogy, and I have to say, my reaction to this is pretty cynical in the sense that, like, I'm already over Disney kind of taking these big properties like Marvel and Star Wars and turning them into, like, the movie equivalent of, like, video game franchises that drop every year. And it's just so clear to me that there's, like, men in suits who see, who are aware that these things can make billions of dollars with, obviously, beyond the films, with all the merchandising tie-ins and everything. And I'm just, I'm not sure, like, is it because there's good stories worthy of being told, or is it just because, like, they recognize they just want to exploit this brand for as much money as they possibly can? I mean, obviously, I hope the films that we get out of it end up being good. Generally speaking, I like Star Wars, but it just seems like okay, Star Wars is now going to become another kind of like the Marvel universe where we just get Star Wars films like constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be cool to. I'd be curious to see about all the other all the other stories you can tell in a Star Wars universe. So, like, I'm hopeful that there might be some interesting stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think they've demonstrated, even though we didn't think Rogue One was, like, a great film in terms of, representation, it did things that Star Wars films generally hadn't done before. And I do think, like, there's a lot of opportunity for stories that are very different from the stories we've been told. So I'm kind of torn, right? Yeah. Obviously, that idea excites me. On the other hand, like, I get exhausted already thinking about, there's like the Avengers Infinity War is already coming, and we know there's going to be another Marvel this movie and another Marvel that movie. Yeah.
The Star Wars, like the expanded universe of Star Wars with like the novels, for instance, has always seemed so overwhelming to me. With the films, when you had the first trilogy and then even when the second trilogy happened, it really still seemed like the Star Wars films were an event. They weren't happening every year. And so it was something special that happened, but now that we're going to be getting them kind of, one a year, it's no longer quite as special. And it reminds me of, the incredible number of Star Wars books that are out there that I'm just like, it's too much. It's too much. That's obviously for me. There's a universe of nerds out there who cannot wait to, rub their hands together in glee at any new Star Wars property that comes out. But for me, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of other stuff we could be doing. Yeah, the Star Wars universe is interesting, but there's a lot of other stuff that's happening in sci-fi that we could be taking a look at. Whatevs. No one asked me. I'm nobody's gatekeeper, which is a problem.
Fun fact, though, if I remember correctly, I think Rian Johnson was one of the few sort of like celebrities or famous people who spoke up in support of us during Gamergate. So,
right on, Rian Johnson.
He gets a plus in my book for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when the entire games industry remained silent, but whatever, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so like there's this whole harassment thing happening in Hollywood, huh?
Oh my God. It is so, it's like, it's so necessary. It's so important. And it is, in a sense, there is a way in which it's cool and strange and to even see men facing these kinds of consequences, right? Men who have been getting away with these things for decades because power structures just were set up to protect them, to make the claims of women, discredited or silenced. But I got to admit, so there's so much coming so fast that it does become also a little exhausting, a little kind of disillusioning, a little bit, him too? Really? Like, God, that sucks. Like, I liked him or, whatever.
Right.
It's tough, it's a tough adjustment.
And it feels very much like 2017. Like everything has been exhausting this year. And there's been so much of everything that, like, I think some of this is happening now of all times because people are so frustrated and feel so unable to do anything about Trump that like people are like, oh, we can do something about this, because I cannot for the life of me understand why this is happening now outside of that cultural context. Because like we've been talking about this shit forever. Like this is not a surprise to feminists even a little bit, that like men abuse women, especially powerful men, right? And that they exploit their positions of power. And this happens in every industry. This is not exclusive to Hollywood at all.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. And in fact, it's, I mean, and I think that we need to actually, I think it's very important that we don't think of this as a Hollywood problem, that we think of it, that we're aware of it as a widespread cultural problem and understand that this kind of reckoning and hopefully a real kind of cultural change around this is required in every industry.
Yeah. One of the things that's been absolutely infuriating to witness is the utterly predictable but completely disheartening reaction of a bunch of folks who are like, well, who else are we going to hear about now? And it's this, like, we're just going to have to throw away everybody because everybody is garbage. To which I would say, kinda, like, let's just burn it all to the ground and start from scratch. But there's this very real sense, especially when we start to hear about people who, may not have been known as behaving in like a garbage fashion for a long time. So the people we're kind of surprised by, the people who are well liked, who are admired. So people like Louis C.K., for instance, right? People who have had like, a patina of, wokeness about them, liberals and progressive people who act like they are allies want to find any reason to still hang on to these people. And so there's this conversation about like, yeah, it's great that there are consequences and people are being called to task for this behavior. But what they actually mean is we want the consequences to remain theoretical and in the future and abstract. But for right now, don't take away the guy whose comedy I like listening to. Don't take away my movies right now. But at some indeterminate future date, sure, we can start holding these predators to account. But let's not do it just yet. As if people need to be told the rules and we're being unfair by letting these guys get away with stuff. Like, if he had known that he might lose his job, maybe he wouldn't do it. And it's like, okay, that's bullshit. But also, you shouldn't not assault someone or not harass someone because you might lose your job. Don't do it because don't be a garbage person, asshole.
If I had known that sexual assault was frowned upon.
Exactly,
So,
but
the sentiment
there
that
of
really...
another time, y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
This was acceptable at some point, quote unquote.
I mean, the sentiment that irks me is the, this is a tough time to be a man.
Oh, God.
It's like, no, it's if you're not a sexual abuser, you're fine. Like,
Right.
Also, it's been tough to be a woman for frickin' millennia. So, boo-hoo.
Yeah.
Another piece of this conversation that happens time and time again that we've been talking about internally as well is how, like, what the hell do you do with media that you love created by shitty dudes, right?
Yeah.
And like...
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. Right. Right.
Go ahead.
Like Louis, the show Louis actually was for me at one point really important. Like, I really loved that show. I thought it was innovative. I thought it was poignant and hilarious and honest. I really admired that show. And so there's a real way in which I almost feel betrayed by him as a person, because I'm like, I let your art speak to me. Like, I let your art into my heart, and you turn out
right.
And you were so unworthy of that.
Carol.
Like, you were not worthy of it. Yeah.
No, it's true. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we made an episode last week. We released a Freak Show episode last week about milkshake ducks. If you don't know what that means, which I didn't know what it meant, and I know now, is all about how do you deal with the fact, like, how do you deal with media that you love created by people that you learn are bad people? Because I don't have an answer. I don't think any of us have specific answers, but we offer some ways to think about it and look at it. So, all right. I very reluctantly want to talk about Thor.
Reluctantly?
Woo, all right.
Why reluctantly?
Okay, here's why. I keep getting on the hype bandwagon when people are like, I love this movie, and I go in being like, fuck yeah, I want to love this movie, and then I fucking don't like it.
You didn't like it at all.
Here's the thing. I loved the first Thor movie. Like, it was my favorite Marvel movie. So Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy ones are my favorite, just for context to understand where I'm coming from. I hated the second Thor movie immensely. So I really wanted the third one to be good. And then I heard a bunch of people really liked it. I heard that it would like had these political undertones to it and all this shit. And I saw it and was like, what? Mm-hmm. Like, I got some thoughts.
Good, because I had the precise opposite reaction, which was that I like the Thor movies fine, but it wasn't like something that I felt that I needed. When I heard that there was going to be this new one coming out, I was like, whatever, I'm sure I'll see it at some point. But I really loved it. I thought it was, and I've said this to you before, I think it was absolute delightful nonsense. Like, in terms of the actual story, there's not a lot of there, but I enjoyed myself the entire time.
See, that's how I feel about Guardians of the Galaxy.
See, I was not a huge fan of those.
Yeah, so we're having the exact same experience with a different media property in this universe. Because for me, Guardians of the Galaxy just sits in that sweet spot where I'm like, man, I'm having a rough day. This is just something I can throw on and like feel like just comforted by in a lot of ways. And Thor, and like, so there are obviously a lot of comparisons to Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok, because Thor Ragnarok like really buckles down into comedy, right? It's very much a comedy. And I feel like only 35% of the humor hit. Like, I just was rolling my eyes most of the time, being like, oh, that didn't work.
So I went in as somebody who actually I've never seen either of the previous Thor movies.
We are really covering all into the spectrum here.
Yeah, right?
And like, to me, I guess I thought, well, Thor is a character who can be, there's a way in which he could be really boring if he, sort of like Superman, if his power was kind of unchallenged, right? Like, it could just be like, oh, he's got so much power, like, what's even the stakes or the, you know, the danger. Right. So I really enjoyed the way that this film sort of constantly had some laughs at Thor's expense. Like, I thought Chris Hemsworth was really great at just these tiny little physical comedy moments. Like, there's a moment where he tries to like lean against something in some kind of like suave way, and it just doesn't work. Right. And it's, and so those little moments were like really funny to me. I really enjoyed that stuff that they did with the character.
One of the reasons why I like the original Thor is because it is ultimately a story about a really powerful man who is super spoiled and has always gotten everything he wanted, and he comes to Earth and he loses literally everything that he thinks is valuable and important, and he has to learn to like find other ways to be, like he has to grow up, right? And I think that most superhero stories are, well, a lot of them are all about like how powerful you are and can you defeat the bad guy, where this one was very much rooted in you are a spoiled piece of shit and you need to learn to be less spoiled, and then you can go off and be heroic once you learn these fundamental lessons. And there is a little bit of that in Ragnarok where, he's like, I don't want to be in power. I don't want to be in charge. Like, I'm just going to go and do other things in other places. Like, fuck this monarchy thing.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And that's what I loved about this, that there were kind of smart things happening. There was growth and evolution in the character. But this latest, Thor Ragnarok, is just... I'll say it again, it's just nonsense, but I found it to be so fun and so just concerned with maintaining the kind of ludicrousness, like the inherent ludicrousness of the superhero genre, that I was absolutely on board.
You're just in love with Jeff Goldblum. That's it. You're happy with anything that he did.
Absolutely. Yes, but even if
good in this,
he was so good. Had he not been in it, I still would have loved it. But the kind of Goldblumishness that we were treated to in this movie, it was a delight. Good. It was an absolute delight, worth the price of admission.
For me, Tessa Thompson was kind of a revelation. Like, she was fantastic, you know, and so I really enjoyed seeing her in this film.
I love how much work she's getting. Like, she's just in everything now. And I remember her from Veronica Mars. Like, that's when I was like, who is this chick? Like, she is cool. And now she's like all over the place, and I'm really excited. And I've never really seen her do comedy. So she did like kind of slapstick stuff. Like, the very first scene that we see her in, where she like is like drunk and fumbling, the slapstick comedy that she did that so well. She did that so well.
Yeah, I love her like embodiment of Valkyrie. I mean, first of all, I love that it's a woman of color playing Valkyrie, right? But yeah, I loved her because she absolutely inhabits that figure, and it's so believable. It's so utterly compelling. To like the fierceness just radiates off of her. And her attractiveness or, sexiness or whatever it's so far beyond even being like secondary or tertiary or whatever. Like, it's just not even a concern, She's just a badass through and through. Loved it.
Yeah. Well, and so, okay, so I have, Cate Blanchett I thought was magnificent.
Oh, yeah.
But so she was absolutely magnificent, and I think she played this strength really nicely. And this is something that you our listeners will probably get used to us talking about is when the strong female character archetype and trope, and most of the time it's too ham-fisted or it's too much one way or too much another way. I think she did a really nice job of finding those the dramatic moments of that character and leaning into it.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, in the Thor universe that we've seen in these 3 movies, the alien women are always fucking sexualized, and it's really pissing me off.
Yeah.
Tessa Thompson has boob armor bullshit that's
True.
that indent crap that would murder you.
Yep.
And Hela's outfit pissed me off. What? You do not need to lean into that. Nobody else, the men of that planet, and don't wear shit like that. Oh, so I was so annoyed the whole time, and it took me a minute to get into appreciating that character, because I'm just sitting there being like, why are you dressed like that?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you I appreciate that Cate played her not sexualized, though, even though she was dressed that way.
Yeah, the only things that along those lines that really did not sit well with me were the sex walks that Valkyrie and Hela both had to do, which I've heard other people refer to as a power walk, and I found that very interesting. I found that very interesting, and this was another female viewer who characterized it that way, and I was like, that's very interesting that they had that reaction to it, because I was so put off by that kind of runway walk that both of them were forced to do at some point, because I just think it's such an inconvenient and uneconomical way of walking. I mean, just on that level, it drove me bananas.
Yeah. Well, I guess then I totally blocked that out of my brain for some reason, even though I notice it every week on Star Trek Discovery that she fucking walks that way, and it drives me nuts. I don't think I noticed it as much in this. So I take back my comment then that it wasn't sexual, because that's totally playing into the sexualizedness of these characters.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean,
her headpiece though.
The headpiece was
with the headpiece. Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Oh no, there are 40 different things in this movie that I was like, yep, got to put that in my cosplay calendar, because I'm absolutely going to try and mock up a version with silly putty and builder's clay to try and get that together. But no, the thing that the overall thing that I loved most about this movie is how whenever there was a fight scene, it was usually Thor, but it looked like something out of a Frank Frazetta piece. And I know right now you have no idea who I'm talking about, Anita. I know that Carolyn does. I know that people can at me at Ebony Aster. Let me know you know what I'm talking about. But it's straight up so many of the fight scenes, the choreography, first of all, to the Led Zeppelin soundtrack, but it looked like something that would be airbrushed on the side of a van in 1982. I loved it. It. It was so hyperbolic and just epic in that metal way. I was into it.
I have to say, the 80s influenced production design. The colors of the ship, the spaceships were these blues and yellows, which were just so visually interesting, and the soundtrack was this synthy soundtrack by Mark Mothersbaugh, formerly of Devo, and so I loved that it had that kind of 80s B movie comic tone to it. That really worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk a little bit about the politics, because there's two things that so one, I appreciate so this is the more minor one. That one, spoilers.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Rosebud is the sled.
that they help Korg like lead a revolution, right? That he's trying to like get folks, whatever. And then there's a scene where they're like, here, let me help you by giving you things. I also appreciated a minor throwaway comment that said, when the Grand Master is like, the slaves, and the woman, she says, says, oh, I'm sorry, prisoners with jobs.
Right.
Like that was very, very smart. I really appreciated that. But one of the things that I saw a lot of people talking about before I saw the movie was these sort of anti-colonial, anti-imperial messages. And I wanted to address that because I do not think that it did what people are saying it did. Now, there is an inherent message in there that I agree with and is obviously very visible is Hela comes back and says, what the hell? This is not the history. I did not mean to hell, whatever. This is not the history. And so there is a little bit of commentary around the fact that history is changed. It is rewritten. It is sanitized. But I think there's a lot of like left reading happening here, which is when like progressives read and interpret a piece of media the way that they want it to be. Like, I don't think that it is inherently saying like imperialism is bad. And like, I guess because it was so hyped, I expected it to be a lot more than it was. So I wonder if I went into it without that hyped, I would have appreciated those messages more.
I mean, I don't think the reading is invalid so much as I think that it's giving the film way too much credit to think that it's explicit enough about that 99.8% of viewers are going to come away with any of that, right? Like it's sort of an interpretation, but it's not like I don't think the film is really overt about that. And I think that it's totally, like I think that we want media to maybe be a little more challenging, like overtly challenging to the status quo and to these political ideas. And Thor Ragnarok, like, we can read that into it, but it's not like actually, most people are not going to walk out of that movie having their political values challenged in any way.
And I have to disagree slightly because I do think that although most people might not come away with that impression or, questioning their assumptions about, colonialism and empire and labor and capital, nevertheless, that reading is textually supported, even at, whatever subtle level we acknowledge that it exists. So that reading is available for those people who want to pick it up. And I was one of those people. So yes, we have Hela saying, you don't get to rewrite history. Like our empire, our very nation, our sense of who we are is built upon like blood and conquest. So you can pretty it up if you want to now, but this is how we got there. And this is how we stay here, regardless of how we think about it. But one of the other things that I found really interesting is, people have talked about the kind of, indigenous nods in the film in the way that the director, incorporated so much like New Zealand and Australian, like indigenous, kind of cultural markers in the film, over and beyond like the actors who were cast, over and beyond the crew who was hired, the vendors who supported the set, etc. But like the fact that, the various spaceships had like, were done up in the colors of like the Aboriginal flag and stuff. I just thought there was a very kind of moving comment about where identity and nation lies and how people take that within them as a people that I felt coming from a Maori director, I just found really compelling.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap up, Thor, I have 3 very important questions.
Hit us.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Are you ready? Number 1, why did they cut Chris Hemsworth's beautiful, beautiful hair?
He looks 1,000,000% better with that short hair.
No way.
Anita.
Oh my God.
No.
Hold on. No. So my superpower is being completely impervious to Chris Hemsworth's charms. That's my superpower. But
how often do you get to use that?
Everyone around me in the theater, like that was, the moment in the first film where I guess, he's shirtless or whatever, and people are moved by that or affected by that. Like people after the film were talking about I heard so many people talking about, oh my God, where they reveal his hair. Oh my God, it was so gorgeous. Like that was the sensational moment.
He's super hot with long hair too, y'all. I'm just saying. Saying.
I'm recusing myself from that part of the conversation.
Okay. The second question is, why does the entire population of Asgard fit onto a small ass ship?
Okay, girl, I was asking myself that same question.
Yeah. And number 3, this is the big one.
Yep.
What kind of piece of shit dad is like, hey, I'm going to die. By the way, you have a murdering evil sister that's going to, like, destroy everything that you've ever held dear and is way too strong for you to defeat. Peace out, yo.
No, what was funny about that, because I was like, wait a minute. How do they not, like, no one has ever talked about Hela before? How is it that there's never been a reference that this is new news to them? Like, we got a sister who's the goddess of death. No one has brought that up when they came over for brunch one day?
Yeah, he's so, like, you're literally not going to be able to defeat her. Figure it out. See you later. Like, what?
Yeah. Well,
what
it was
a dick.
Do either of you guys, excuse me. Okay, I'm calling myself out on this one. Listeners, I'm trying to do better about using the guys as the universal signifier of people. So, hey, folks, Anita, Carol, do either of you watch Sherlock?
Yeah, I used to until it got so homophobic I couldn't handle it anymore.
So if you haven't seen the latest season, spoiler alert, Sherlock and Mycroft are revealed to have a sister who's, like exponentially more geniusified than even Sherlock is, right? And she's mentally unstable and blah 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 and whatever. So her backstory hinges upon her being kind of like erased from the family history, and Sherlock has no idea that she existed. Blah blah. And I'm like, okay, I can almost believe that your parents never spoke of your sister again, and they convinced your brother to do the same. But what about, like, the mailman? What about, like, your aunts and uncles? What about, like, the people down the street? Like, no one ever says, like, hey, you had a sister. What happened to your sister? Like, how is Hela new news?
I don't know, man. All right. Let's talk about video games.
Yeah.
Okay. Super Mario Odyssey. It's a game.
So it sure is a game.
It's a really good game.
Yes. But Anita, maybe you can help me sort out my feelings around this, because I'm conflicted about the ending of this game and some stuff that happens after the ending of the game.
Can we talk about the beginning of the game before the ending of the game?
Sure. So the whole setup of the game, shocker, Bowser kidnaps Peach for the umpteenth time. But it doubles down on the damseling, because in addition to Peach being kidnapped, Bowser also kidnaps Tiara, who is a sentient female hat or crown, and because he's trying to force Peach into marriage, and he wants this magical crown atop her head, during the ceremony. And so you, as Mario, you pair up with Cappy, who is Tiara's brother. And so you're two dudes on a quest to rescue two chicks, Like,
yeah, totally.
It's like
don't you do that all the
double
time?
damseling. Yeah.
All the time.
And like the whole gendered hats, like, do you even, like, okay, if you're going to gender the hats, why not switch it around? Like, why not have the hat with you be
because
the
a tiara
sister?
Can't be male. Obviously. Duh.
Right,
Carol.
I know. That's what people would say. That's what people would say. It's anyway.
So the thing about Odyssey is that, like, it is such a charming game, right? Like, I was actually, I'm not super in love with 3D platformers in general. Navigating them is a little tricky sometimes, but I found this, it's just really charming. And I've been playing it a bunch just while I've been traveling, and I feel like they did a lot of interesting, innovative mechanic stuff, and every world has its own little elements, and it's just, like, refreshing. It's like, whenever a new Mario game comes out, it's always refreshing, an abundance of all of these, like, shoot 'em up games, right?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, and so that opening was just kind of, I don't know why it didn't occur to me. I was just excited about the mechanics of the game, and then I saw that opening and just was really sad. Like, what, really? Like, again, you couldn't think of anything else to do?
Yeah, and because the last kind of semi-core Mario game was 3D World, and Peach was playable in that. And it's like, why do you have to? There's obviously any number. So I mentioned this on Twitter, and like so many people come back at me with like, well, what, you know, like what else are they going to do? Like as if there's like no other excuse they can possibly come up with for Mario to go on an adventure, right?
Yeah, and so like, okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of spoilers for the end of the game, or the end of the story rather, because there's a thing that happens.
Right. So after you defeat Bowser, shocker, you're all on the moon together, Peach and Bowser and Mario. And Bowser kind of runs up to Peach, and he has a piranha plant, which to him is like a romantic offering. And he's like holding the piranha.
To me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. He's holding it like up to Peach, right? Because he's still not given up. And Mario's response to this isn't something like, hey, Bowser, cool it, bud. Like, get out of her face. You know, just let her alone. He pulls out his own little flower and runs up, and Bowser and Mario kind of like jostle each other and push their flowers in her face, and it's kind of like,
what?
Pick me moment. And so it kind of, for me, it almost changes how it almost kind of retcons the whole series in some degree, because now I think, so there's a game called Braid by Jonathan Blow, came out a few years ago. It was Mario inspired to some degree.
Like a decade ago.
Okay, yes.
It was a long time ago.
But it's obviously a game that's kind of playing with Mario concepts and, you know, stuff. And in that game, like, the big surprise twist is that you aren't really trying to rescue the princess. You're actually like a kind of stalker, and the princess is actually trying to run away from you.
Ooh.
And it almost made me feel like, okay, Mario is a kind of like, he's not rescuing the princess because he's selfless or heroic and just doesn't want her to be, you know, kidnapped. It's like he's rescuing her because he wants her for himself, you know, like he's
I don't think I'm like, that's not surprising to me, because, you know, you rescue Peach and you get a kiss in the original game.
Yeah.
Like there's always like this romantic element of like, I get her now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm conflicted about this is that, you know, Peach, the way Peach responds to this is that she just kind of gives them both the cold shoulder. She's like, you know, and she walks off on her own, and then Bowser and Mario kind of console each other for a moment, like, oh, it's okay, over their mutual broken hearts. And Peach just walks off and like jumps in the Odyssey, Mario's ship, and starts to fly off like on her own. And so she's not like a reward in the typical sense of like, she doesn't like agree, you know, she doesn't give Mario anything. It's almost, you know, she kind of reacts as if Mario is being a jerk. So like, that's cool, right? But I'm also like, why? But Mario, you're being a jerk. Like, why are you being a jerk? And okay. And
this is so great for me because I have obviously not played this game, don't know anything about it, and so my mind is being boggled as Carol gives it this rundown.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like a lot of people would think that justify, like, they flip the trope, right? Like, they play with it. They make you think it's one thing when it's another. And I'm like, cool, but it doesn't justify that we just spent like 10 hours with the game or however long it takes to get to that point, thinking you're doing the same goddamn thing the whole time, right? Like, I think I appreciate that they're playing with it. It's like, that is a step up for Nintendo, but it doesn't justify the existence of the damsel trope.
Right, exactly. And so then afterwards, the game does something else with Peach that it's like, it's cool, but it's also frustrating in a way because I want more of it, which is that we see Peach, you know, you go back to Peach's castle and everyone's like, oh my God, Peach is gone again. She's gone. But it turns out like she's just gone because she finally wanted to fucking do something for herself. So she packed her suitcase
right on, Peach.
And went on a vacation. Like,
wow. Carolyn doesn't say the F word very often. She's serious.
I know, but I'm like, way to go, Peach. Like, you finally doing something for yourself for once in your life. And so then you see her on vacation in each of the areas throughout the game. Like if you go back to them, you see her there, and she's wearing like different outfits. You know, she's in one area, she's got this really cool like adventurer's outfit, and and that just makes me wish more that, like, man, a game about like Peach going on her own like real adventure for once, and not like some Super Princess Peach sexist bullshit game, but like real
the PMS game.
The game where your powers are like a PMS joke, but actually having her own adventure, like that could be so cool, I want like that little glimpse of Peach finally having some freedom and doing something for herself. It's like, yes, give me more of that. Like I want more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe one day she can be in her own game doing that shit, right?
Hey, slow down.
It should not be. This should not.
Baby steps.
I know. All right, so this podcast is new, as you might know from the whole, like, episode 1, yay! And we wanted to have a place in this podcast to just, like, talk about the random shit that we engage with that might not be, like, the most topical or whatever's on our mind this week. Ebony really wants to call this segment, What's Your Deal? Yep. Which I think is not the best title, so,
Oh, man. Are we going to have factions? I just need some support from the listeners.
So, if you have suggestions for what we can call whatever the hell it is that we're about to do right now, these like little quick like da-da-da-da moments, send in your thoughts. So that said, let's pretend that we're queuing up a new segment.
Ebony, what's your deal? See how naturally it flows?
Hey, Ebony. Yeah. What's your deal this week?
Okay, my deal this week is I'm trying to be serious here. Not really. So,
no, you're not.
One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is how much crime TV and crime fiction I read and crime like thriller movies, etc. Because I recognize that there's something ultimately kind of gross about the way that it fetishizes violence, particularly violence against women and other vulnerable peoples, vulnerable in the sense of like children, for instance. And so I avidly consume this kind of stuff. Carol and I have bonded over the fact that we both love like Scandi noir, like give us some just, dour, somber, kind of emotionally detached Stockholm detective, and we are into it. But yeah, so one of the things that I've been thinking about, because I consume so much of this, is what exactly it's doing for me. And so I would say my deal in What's My Deal is I would love I want to hash this out with people, and I would love for people to @ me on Twitter, because I recognize, or I think I'm recognizing, that part of what the appeal of this genre is the allure of resolution, the desire to kind of see justice served. That I think in a very personal way is a way for me to manage like grief and loss. So I would love to hear other people's thoughts on that, especially people who watch, endless amounts of like Law and Order or Criminal Minds or, even things like Sherlock or Elementary or whatever. I mean, there's just this fascination with crime, right? But crime and justice being served by this band of dedicated professionals that I think is really problematic in a way, and yet it's so incredibly popular. Like of any new slate of shows that are going to come out any given year, a good 60 to 75% of them are probably going to be some new version of a crime procedural, Well,
and one of the problems with that, too, is that you have, like, I think there's a lot of comfort that people take in police procedurals and law procedural, like legal ones, because the state is always good.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That justice always gets served. Yeah, and that's just so far from reality.
Seriously, that's the thing. This is one of the reasons why I have to constantly question myself, because I am, this is where I get into trouble. Episode 1, I am so kind of radically like past prison reform, police reform, to the point of like abolition of that a tool of that arm of the state. So the appeal of this genre for me is I don't get it. I don't understand what I find comforting about it. And I have to recognize that, it's this kind of deep-seated desire to have, justice meted out, as I said, to have resolution. Because, grief doesn't work in this way.
Yeah. To me, it's in part the illusion of like a moral universe, right? It's like, which we all know that the universe is not moral at all. But seeing, and particularly with the Scandi noir, these kind of Scandinavian crime novels like the Wallander series, which I loved. It's about seeing an individual struggle within a system to bring about like some kind of justice.
Right.
Like I think the Scandinavian novels are often at least a little more honest about the realities that police systems are not inherently like they don't function as they should, or they're not inherently just.
Right.
So.
I also find it very interesting because I watch a lot of crime TV that's not necessarily American. So, stuff from the UK, stuff from Europe, etc. And for the most part, these are police officers who do not carry guns. And so the presentation of violence on the screen and, interactions and exchanges with criminals, whether that be, the serial killer of the week or whether it be some gangland criminal or whatever, so rarely revolves around guns. It's very interesting, the presentation of violence in American TV versus European TV crime shows, which I also find really interesting.
Hey, Caro.
Yo, Anita.
What's your deal?
I
beat you to it.
I really don't like it. We've got to be able to come up with something better than what's your deal. I feel like it's a goddamn news, like a bad fucking contest.
I know,
show
that's what I love about it. It's like, listen, what's your deal is the verbal, like our podcast equivalent of Steve Buscemi in 30 Rock saying, "What's up, fellow youths?" Like it's just so tired.
All right, Kara, what's on your mind this week?
So this week, I want to take the opportunity to make a very, very, very strong recommendation for a wonderful game / visual novel called Butterfly Soup. It's on, if you Google Butterfly Soup, you'll find it. It's available for free / pay what you want. And if you are able to pay something, I highly encourage you to do so. It takes like 3 or 4 hours. Almost anyone can play it. It's kind of like reading a comic. And it is a comic, it is billed as being about queer Asian girls playing baseball and falling in love. Oh. And that is accurate. But these 4 characters that this game focuses on are, so wonderful. Like they're so three-dimensional, so complex, so this game is laugh out loud hilarious. One of the characters, her name is Min. She's very much a tomboy. She might even be genderqueer, but she's young, so she's kind of at a tomboy stage. And she's like extremely fierce. When she gets upset, she'll say things like "Shut the fuck your mouth," but she's also like so sweet. She's got all this sweetness inside of her, and the game it's heartwarming, it's hilarious, and it doesn't at all shy away from like acknowledging kind of self loathing or emotional and psychological struggles that a lot of people go through in high school. And there's a lot of interesting cultural stuff. Anita, there's one point when I thought of you because Min, as a young girl, her parents are really upset with with the fact that she's such a tomboy. Like they're very traditional, Asian parents.
Why did you think of me?
Well, listen, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. So at one point they say, we may have to take you to the doctor and have your hormones levels checked because you are not like a normal girl. Mm. And Min says like, I don't have to go to the doctor. And one of the things they cite, the parents, is like, you like games too much. And so Min says like, there's nothing wrong with with a girl liking games. And then one of the parents says, yes, there is. It's not called a it's called a Game Boy, not a Game Girl.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly what my parents said to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, wonderful, wonderful game.
Oh.
It's easily one of my favorites for the year.
Oh wow!
And,
This has
yeah.
been a big year.
When I say
Holy.
it's good, I mean it is really good.
Wow.
And so definitely, that's my deal this week. Please check out Butterfly Soup. You will not be disappointed.
This deal shit's gonna stick, isn't it?
If I have anything to say about it.
All right. So I guess my deal this week is all right. Here we go. So
Yeah.
I went to see Princess Nokia perform in Stockholm, and she was lovely. I had never heard of her before, and so I was really, it's always hit or miss when you go see someone that you've never heard before in terms of music. And I go see a lot of live shows, and she was great and delightful, and just a really warm, lovely performer. She does a really good job, with engaging the audience. But the reason I bring this up is not really to talk about that, is because I've been going to see concerts since I was 15. It's one of the things that I do. I have every ticket stub for every concert I've ever been to. This is such
Listen
it's
to
been a part of my
Anita.
life.
I
Yeah.
go to
No,
Sweden. I eat at restaurants. I go out to live music.
Whatever.
I'm an
Okay,
engaged member of the population.
I'm trying to make the point that I've been to a lot of shows, right? And I have never consistently hated audiences and wanted to stop going to shows since I started going to shows in San Francisco. Being in the reason I brought up that it was in Stockholm is because this audience was lovely. They were there. They were listening to the music. They were engaged with the music. They were not talking to each other the whole goddamn time. In San Francisco, without fail, I am always miserable. And I've gotten into fights with people, verbal altercations with people, because they won't shut the fuck up in the middle of a goddamn concert. And so
I know.
It's every single time, no matter where you stand, no matter where you sit, it's a part of this larger sense of entitlement that has come with the rise of tech bros in San Francisco, and it's driving me up the wall. I will not share this today, but maybe for a bonus content, I'll tell you about the one time that I was exposed to some very graphic moments of things at concerts. That was just the most horrible thing ever.
If for no other reason than you get to hear this story, you need to sign up to get this bonus content, because that story is amazing.
It is a good story. Maybe we'll put it on this week's bonus content. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But it's just this doesn't happen in LA. This doesn't happen in other places I go. It is so specific to SF Bay Area, and what in the fuck?
No, I mean, I've been to a number of shows in the Bay Area where the artists are surprised and they actually say something like, "Why are you all talking?" It's because it's disrespectful to your fellow audience members. It's disrespectful to the artists.
Yeah.
Why go to the show if you're just going to fucking stand around and talk?
Right.
It's so infuriating.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, y'all. It is time for Hate Mail Hootenanny. This is a segment that is bonus content for our podcast members. So head over to our drip page. Link is in the show notes. If you want to become a subscriber and support us, that would be amazing. And you'll get all this cool extra bonus content where we talk shit about all the assholes who send us hate mail. And I will tell my ridiculous story about the ultimately worst experience I ever had at a concert in San Francisco. So head on over there for more info. If you don't remember, Drip is Kickstarter's brand new subscription service crowdfunding platform, which we are so excited to be a part of. We're really excited for this podcast to create a community around us. We want to talk to you. We want you to talk to us. We want to, really let this thing live and grow with all of you who are a part of this. So if you can support us, please do. Any amount that you can donate a month will be enormously helpful to keep this on the air. But this is free for everybody to listen to, just like all of our stuff at Feminist Frequency. But we are listener supported, so please donate and become a member of this if you can.
Yes.
We really appreciate that. All right. New New episodes are coming out every single Wednesday until we take a break, which we will at some point, but every single Wednesday, first thing in the morning. Well, come on, we got to take breaks sometimes, right? No? We're going to do this forever? All right. If you like the show, we have a favor to ask you. Wherever you are listening, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play or any of the other places, please leave us a little review. We get a lot of hate mail, so your positive review will help a lot. It helps spread the word about our new show. You can subscribe at all of those places to get our feed into your feed or whatever the hell how technology works. And tell your friends if you like it. Please share it with everybody else. You can check out everything we do, from podcasts to videos to articles to live streams at feministfrequency.com. And you can find each of us on Twitter. I am at Anita Sarkeesian.
I'm at Carolyn Michelle.
I'm at Ebony Aster and at your service.
I was going to say just at Ebony all the time because she loves being
constantly. I do.
Our producers are Max Jacobs and Phil Circus, who also composed our awesome theme music. Yay!
Yeah.
We will see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Later.